Thanks, David. I'll begin. William Sheriff, the Executive Chairman, and Paul Goranson, our CEO, will be joining me shortly for the technical details. A little bit about the company. It was started about 10 years ago, even though we've been in hibernation for most of that time, being very frugal with our budget and making acquisitions that didn't cost the company a lot of money. We're focused on being the next and premier ISR operator in the U.S. We see that that was the first step in achieving that goal was getting the two plants in Texas that are licensed, two of only 11 ISR plants. But our team has been built around ISR. That's all we plan to do is ISR in the U.S., but we plan to excel at it. We've got a lot of history involved here. Most of the technical staff came out of Energy Metals, a company back in the last boom, 04 to 08. Went into Uranium One, came out of Uranium One, and with that, after the 10-year hiatus, decided it was time to get active about this time last year, and we went out searching for the CEO, and I'm happy to report we were able to get Paul Goranson, who has a wealth of experience in this, having been president of Cameco Resources and been involved with just about every ISR plant in the U.S., either design, operating, or building it. So that's really how a bit of the background. And we have centered our operations in Texas, had a lot of property in New Mexico as well. And that first major acquisition of Westwater that closed last year at the end of the year is what really catapulted us into a leadership position in terms of bringing on new production. We've got a timeline on refurbishing our lead plant, the Rosita plant, of less than a year at a very modest, less than $1 million cost. Obviously, we have wellfield development on top of that. But that's the overview. We'll tell you a little bit about the market cap of the company. We're sitting just about 275 to 300 million based on daily fluctuations. Got about 50-50 mix between retail and institutions. Although I would mention a lot of that retail is very high net worth individuals and concentrated in hands of about 25 investors, along with the usual mix. Also have 300,000 pounds of yellow cake in inventory. And we purchased this to be able to buffer the delivery commitments on contracts as opposed to speculating on the price. Obviously, we think it's a good buy and it will serve us better than cash for the foreseeable future. But the main reason was to buffer those initial contract delivery terms on new contracts coming up. The key to our success really is people. Uranium is not particularly a scarce commodity. It's the 8th most abundant element in the earth. But the real trick is getting it out and marketing it, and then reclamation. And to that end, we've been able to retain and build on what we think is the most elite ISR team in the U.S. and possibly would compare well with anyone in the world. As I mentioned, Paul's career, he probably most famous recently for being the one that sold into the spot market during the last cycle at Alta Mesa Mesteña, one of the few producers during that time, and was able to take advantage of triple-digit prices during that and built that from the ground up. Dr. Stover is one of the original pioneers with the original patents in the ISR process. He's our Chief Technical Officer. I won't read through all of these in the interest of time, but I encourage you to do so, and you'll see each of them as a vast experience in ISR. A couple I will point out on the next page. Excuse me. Doug Underhill is our Chief Geologist. Gordon Peak, our landman that's been with us for a long time, who's really instrumental in acquiring projects for us based on our large database that Paul will tell you a bit more about. And Joe Harrington is an expert in reclamation, having won many awards for it and holding patents on the process. So that's really the team, where we've come from and where we're going. Here again, our assets and production future immediately will be in Texas, followed by our long-term plans in New Mexico, where we've got a bit of work to do with community relations, and we view that as our 5-year out plus. But we do have over 100 million pounds of historical resources in New Mexico, along with 32 million pounds of 43-101. So it's really a storehouse of value for the long term in the company. And we do have a few other assets, but in light of the time, I'll hand it over to Paul, and he can run you through some of the technical details of the projects. Paul?
Thanks, Bill. I'll kick it off with our Texas activities. As Bill mentioned, we acquired the Westwater assets, and those had 2 licensed facilities in South Texas, one being the Rosita processing facility and the other being Kingsville Dome. We also picked up an exploration project called Butler Ranch. The Texas is exciting because it's a very good, it's a historic uranium production district. Over 80 million pounds of uranium was produced there. About half of that was from in situ recovery. And so that was what gives us the, we believe, is the opportunity there. We are actively looking at properties and looking for feed to feed our plants. Our targets are Kingsville Dome and Rosita. Those are our 2 primary production facilities. They have a combined capacity of about 1.6 million pounds a year of uranium production. And that's not a licensed capacity. That is strictly a function of the size of the equipment, the drying capacity, et cetera. But both plants are built to where we can effectively bolt on additional drying capacity to increase their nameplate capacity as well. We're starting a capital campaign at Rosita, and the intent of that campaign is to bring it to production capability within the next 9 months or so. And we see this one as the low-hanging fruit within the portfolio of properties we got from through the Westwater transaction. And it's principally because it's the most recently refurbished, and the other is it has never been operated. So it's in very good shape. And it's going to take a minimal amount of, or relatively limited amount of capital to be able to refurbish it and bring it to that production capability. And we're doing most of this with our own house people to keep costs low. Kingsville Dome did receive a refurbishment also back in 2005. It'll be part of our production planning as we see market opportunities improve and also the need for additional production capacity. It did receive a full refurbishment back in 2005. And just real quickly, the reason when I talk about refurbishment, I'm talking about the conversion to central processing plants, allowing us to use satellite remote ion exchange facilities where the resin's hauled to these processing plants, and we can recover the uranium and create the yellow cake product. It's a fairly typical way of operating, and it's the way it's been done for quite some time in Wyoming. And so our strategy is built around increasing the number of satellites that can be producing into these facilities. As I mentioned, we have a trained and experienced workforce that's helping us build out Rosita, but also maintaining the facilities we have currently in our hands. Our growth is in South Texas. Our organic growth right now, a short-term organic growth plan is South Texas. We intend to look at existing wellfield resources at Rosita and also within the land package we've acquired through the Westwater transaction, that being Butler Ranch principally. It has significant historic mineral resources, but they need to be confirmed and drilled out to the NI 43-101 standards. We are going to be doing that over the summer, probably, and also into the fall. We also just recently acquired a large database of that includes information on previously permitted facilities that never actually operated. And these are all relatively recent, within the last 10 years. And we are currently in the process of leasing and acquiring those properties, and we'll be also applying for permits for drilling. And but these will be incorporated under the Rosita license. So by having a licensed facility, it's a matter of an amendment to add in that production capability into the operating facility. We're also looking at other opportunities. This database plus the one we acquired from Westwater plus our own organic databases. We are actively looking at other facilities, so we have a long-term development and production plan that allow us to ultimately be able to not only operate Rosita, but also operate Kingsville Dome as central processing plants as the market requires. Keep in mind, we're not going to go into, our plan is not to immediately go into production, but to be prepared to go into production when market signals are showing up. And we hope to see, our expectation is we'll see that demand showing up within the next year or so. New Mexico, we've truly grown New Mexico with the Westwater transaction. As Bill mentioned, it's a rather sizable position. We've really expanded it, and we're currently in the process of evaluating some of those properties. This is our resource base. Almost all our significant resources rest in New Mexico. We've got our Crown Point House Butte. These are the properties that have actual 43101 resources and are partially licensed, and that license is held by Laramide Resources. And we hope to see that go into production sometime in the near future. Juan Tafoya Marquez is actually 2 deposits that we've combined. We're currently updating the PEA and technical report as a combined project to demonstrate their feasibility. And that will also test for means for recovering uranium without having to haul to a conventional mill in another state, including possibility of doing ISR. And we have other ISR amenable properties that are tied into our resource base. Our West Largo and is another property in an Ambrosia Lake. And what I like to talk about is our secret sauce. And I mentioned earlier, we're taking this data that we've acquired over the years, not only just from the most recent acquisitions, but have been acquired by Encore over the last 10 years it's been around. And we're using that to develop production plans. We don't believe we have to go out and do any greenfield exploration. We know where the deposits are. It's a matter of getting access to those deposits through leasing or other acquisitions, and potentially growing, using that information also to help grow the company organically, or possibly also strengthen the opportunity through potential mergers and acquisitions in the near term that would give us a much longer pipeline for production. And this is generally the summary of everything we've got. We've already gone over this portion here, but I think what our strongest position is our strength of our technical team. We continue to add experienced people to our technical team. We're focusing on geologists. We've got a good, with the Westwater transaction, we acquired a really strong engineering team. And so the fact that most of us have operated in South Texas for years and as part of our careers on this team, we know the regulatory environment, we know the district very well, and we know how to execute. We all have a history of success. I believe that with a combination of Texas, New Mexico, and also the potential for additional mergers and acquisitions, that we have a real solid growth plan going forward.